So the real estate market in Phoenix is booming. So the local economy in Phoenix is booming. And along with that comes a lot of jobs. And with jobs comes housing. People have to live in a place where there's a lot of jobs, and people want to live, frankly, in Phoenix because primarily the weather. Yes, I know, I talk about it all the time. I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. Phoenix has 2 seasons, hot for 4 months, and the other 8 months, pure awesomeness. I know, that is the name of the season. I'm telling you, look it up on Google or the dictionary. By the way, do we still have those? And it's true. There's 2 seasons in Phoenix, pure awesomeness and, well, hot. And right now we're in the hot season, but that's not stopping population migration from pouring into Phoenix, as we still have a solid positive net migration and population is being added to the Phoenix area every single day. So when you relocate here to Phoenix, or if you're going to move from one home to another within the Phoenix area, these are the homes that you want to avoid, if at all possible, when purchasing right here in the greater Phoenix area. Oh, and you definitely want to stay tuned to the very end, because I'm going to talk about the #1 secret that no one talks about. And you definitely want to avoid this when purchasing a home here in Phoenix. Now, before we go any further, do you guys like the glasses? These are my new Meta glasses, so not only are you watching me, but I'm watching you. Anyways, if you want any questions answered, we would love to chat with you one-on-one. Give us a call, 480-660-5974. We can chat about anything you want and everything Phoenix, and any off-market properties. We always carry a list of about 20 to 25 properties that no one else knows about, or a vacant home list. Let us know. We'd be happy to give you that information when you give us a call. Now let's hit this list up right now. The first type of home that you want to try to avoid, if at all possible, are going to be properties with hauled water. Now, what in the world does that mean? I heard Phoenix has these water issues, and so does that have something to do with that? Well, yes, and also no. See, the water issues that a lot of people are talking about nationally, well, that's a little different than this issue, and that's a whole nother conversation. I have several videos on this YouTube channel to check out about that. But regarding these property types, there are actually properties in Arizona that do not have plumbing from a city or private water company water source. So with that, you just don't turn on the water and it is unlimited until you turn off the water spigot. That's not how this works. Now, that's how it works for the vast majority of properties in and around the Phoenix area, but there are some properties in more rural areas that are on hauled water and have no access to city or a private water company or a well. And the most famous or infamous area for these types of properties are going to be located in the Rio Verde foothills area, which is a Scottsdale address. So essentially with hauled water, think septic tank, but it's not a septic tank because that's gross. It's a water tank that is huge, buried underground, and you use that for all of your water for your household needs. So when the tank gets low, there's sensors in there that automatically notify the water providing company, that then has a big truck and they come out and they fill that tank up with water. And this goes on and on and on for as long as you live there. So essentially, there should be no disruption in your water, and it's somewhat like having a normal water supply that is endless, but it's not. And you hope that the water company that has the trucks never screws this up or misses that sensor alert, because then not having water in your house, yeah, that's not cool. And sidebar about this, the company that supplies the water, well, that was a big issue just a couple years ago, where the city of Scottsdale was actually providing the water to these residents in the Rio Verde foothills area specifically that had water tanks for hauled water, and they actually stopped providing the water because of contractual disputes. Now, since that has been remedied and there's water flowing back to these water tanks from a water provider, but it's still a band-aid on the long-term solution, and these water companies want this area to establish their own water district so that there is a more permanent solution in place. But as of right now, it still isn't permanent, and there's still some logistics to be worked out. So the moral of the story overall is just, if you can, avoid properties that have hauled water. Next on the list is going to be homes in an area that have expansive soils. If you can avoid these, I would overall. So what are expansive soils? Well, these are areas that actually have shrinkage or swelling of soil to be more prone and more likely to happen as opposed to other areas around the valley. It's true. So one way that you can get around doing this is having a slab when you have your house built that is a post-tension slab. Now, you will know if you have a post-tension slab because there'll be a stamp on the slab slab typically towards the front middle of that slab that will tell you that it's post-tension. So you never should be drilling into it for remodeling projects without consulting first the builder or engineer for these types of slabs. Now, you don't have to have post-tension slabs, but typically they work better in an area that has more expansive soils. Now, you can see on the map right here, there are multiple areas around the Phoenix area that are more red or orangish here that again are going to have soils that are more likely to swell or shrink than other places across the valley, and therefore foundation issues could come up. Now, remember, a lot of places in Phoenix don't have basements, and there are some that do, but again, a reason that most don't have basements throughout the Phoenix area is because there is a frost line that is much higher, so you don't need to dig a basement like in places in the Midwest to get down above that frost line. And the water table in certain areas is a little bit higher. And the soil, well, it's not fertile farmland soil like you might think of in the Midwest. It is hard, decomposed granite. And so there's a cost to dig and drill into that soil that's much higher than if you don't and just do a slab on grade. So although you can certainly own a home that is on expansive soils, if you can avoid it, it might be best overall to just do that. Next are going to be homes that are either from a wholesaler or a foreclosure. See, if you buy a home in the state of Arizona and it's on the market and you have a normal AAR state purchase contract, you are going to be afforded time to do all of your due diligence and inspections on the property. In fact, the default is 10 days in Arizona, which is a beautiful thing because not only do you get 10 days, but in the contract, it states that the buyer has full authority to cancel that contract in the first 10 days or whatever due diligence time period you have. As long as you give a reason, you can cancel for whatever reason that is. And seller, well, you don't get any say in that, unfortunately. So it's a big advantage to the buyer to get under contract and then have the time to breathe and do all your inspections to make sure the house is exactly what you are looking for and there's no surprises. But when it comes to foreclosures or even getting a property that's from a wholesaler, you are not always afforded that due diligence period. Matter of fact, if it's a foreclosure, you do not get that due diligence period. You are buying a can of worms potentially because it ain't open and you can't see what's in there. So you're taking the risk of potentially getting a good deal on a property, but you also are the risk of getting some surprises when you maybe look behind the curtain. So it really comes down to risk reward and what you are comfortable doing. There are a lot of people who do this all the time and they're totally fine with it. And every once in a while, if they get some surprises that are going to be very expensive, they deal with it because it doesn't still outweigh the fact that they got good deals on the other properties that didn't have too many surprises. So it just depends on what your comfortability aspect is. Just know that if you buy a foreclosed property, you could have some issues on the property because you don't have the time to inspect it ahead of time before it is yours. In fact, in Arizona, we are a trustee sale state. So technically, we don't even have foreclosures. We have trustee sales, which technically are kind of like the same, but the process technically is a little bit different. But if you want to buy one of these, you can go actually down to the trustee sales office or the courthouse steps, and you can actually auction or bid at one of those properties at the auction. Now, to go there and bid, you have to have $10,000 that you do have to put up front, that if you don't get the property, you will get that back. But you got to put $10,000 up just to get in the door to potentially bid on a foreclosed property. So again, a lot of people are professionals. They do this all the time. If this is not you, I would highly recommend you stay away from buying one of these properties. Next on the list are going to be land leases. What in the world is that? Is that a thing in residential? Well, not terribly common, but it is a thing in the Phoenix area. In fact, if you look at the map right here, you'll see these dots of properties all across the Phoenix area that are scattered about. These are all land leases. So these areas all have properties that you can buy and you will own the actual house, the actual sticks and bricks, the improvement value of the house, but you won't own the land that it sits on. And because of that, not only will you not own the land, you will have to pay a fee every month to the landlord who owns the land because, again, it is a land lease. So typically how these properties works is you will have your mortgage payment. You will get qualified for a loan if you don't pay cash, and you'll have that monthly mortgage payment. In addition to that, you will also have your insurance and your property taxes you have to pay like any other house. If it's an HOA, which the vast majority of these are, you will have an HOA payment as well. In addition to all of that, you also have a land lease payment. So I'll give you a quick example. There's a property that a client of mine liked here recently in the McCormick Ranch area. And in that McCormick Ranch area in Scottsdale, there's an area called Santo Thomas that is a land lease neighborhood. In this situation, the land lease is on a 99-year lease and it's up for renewal in 2076. So that amount you will pay monthly, which in this case was about $950 a month, is set and locked in until 2076. At that point, it will be renegotiated and it will still be a land lease most likely, but the fees could go up or down. Most likely it's going to go, you got it, up. So why in the world, Kelly, would anybody buy one of these properties? Good question. The main reason you do it is because it's cheaper. That's right. That same house that is not on a land lease actually will cost a significant amount more just down the street. So in this situation, if you are paying cash, it could work out really well because you can pay cash for a house that's $1 million. Whereas if you want to pay cash, that same house that's not a land lease might cost $1.6 million or $1.7 million. So in this situation, you just pay $1 million, get the same type of house with the same square footage and same type of lot and yard, but you just have a higher monthly payment from there on out. So maybe if you're retired, it works really well for people like this because maybe you're on fixed income and you know what your income will be every single month. So paying that land lease amount is just fine. Maybe you have annuities where you have guaranteed income coming in every month, that sort of thing. And so it just works from that standpoint. But typically for younger people, you don't see too many buying land leases for the reasons we just discussed. But overall, I'm not a huge fan of these. I'd rather own the dirt and the sticks and bricks when I buy a house, my personal opinion. And so I would recommend to stay away from them if you possibly can at all. The next type of homes I would stay away from, this seems kind of obvious, but I would do it, are overpriced homes. Well, duh, Kelly, why would I ever pay more for a house than market value? You'd be surprised. A lot of people get emotionally tied to properties and they overpay. And in this market, this is your chance. This is your time if you're a buyer to take advantage and get a good deal. Now, what is a good deal? Well, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so a good deal doesn't always mean you're getting $50,000, $100,000 off the asking price. Maybe it's $10,000, maybe it's $15,000, maybe it's $5,000, but you get a $30,000 credit for things like a loan rate buy down or repairs even done for you before you even move in from the seller. There's all kinds of structure, creative ways that you can negotiate on right now that you just didn't have the opportunity to do so a year or 2 or 3 ago. But as a buyer in this market, it is smart to not overpay for a property and negotiate. Now, the number one type of home that we see that people overpay on all the time is going to be fully remodeled, flipped homes. You got to be careful on these properties because a lot of times these flip investors will put lipstick on a pig and everything else is not done too well. You know, behind the wall, those things are not done too well. Maybe the plumbing wasn't done correctly. Maybe the air conditioner is still very, very old. Maybe the roof hasn't been replaced in 20, 25 years. These type of things, which will be very expensive repairs down the road, you've got to look out for and not overpay and factor that into the cost. And just don't get caught up on the fact that it has pretty shiny objects when you walk through the house the first or second time. The next type of home that I would stay away from are homes that back to a busy road. That's right, guys. See, in Arizona, it's not the same as other cities across America. In Phoenix, Arizona, you have block walls that really are outlining not just a lot of a one single house, but they outline the entire subdivision. So when you're driving down the street, a lot of times you can't see right into the house because the backyard of a property will be facing the road with a block wall there. Now, some of these are set back pretty well from the busy road, so that acts as a buffer, which is nice, but a lot of times they're not. And the backyard wall of your yard are right up against a busy 2, 3, or 4 lane road each way in the Phoenix area. So I would highly recommend to stay away from these because, well, it's a very small buyer pool of people that will actually be okay with a bunch of road noise in their backyard, or even possibly even worse, inside their house because maybe the windows are old and they don't have good insulation. But if you do buy one of these houses, you have to buy it right because you want to pass on that same discount to the next buyer when they purchase it. So I would recommend on a really busy road, you need to factor in a buffer of about 8 to 10% off the asking price to pass that on to the next buyer when you go to sell. If it's on a semi-busy road where maybe there's 2 lanes each way or even 1 lane each way, then you're probably looking somewhere on the factor of 4 to 5% as a discount off the asking price or market value even more particularly. So very close things to pay attention to because again, that goes back to the last reason you don't want to overpay for a property. And if you don't factor that discount in for a house on a road, semi or really busy road, you will be up a creek without a paddle when you go to sell it at some point in the future. Now, last but not least, this is the one you waited for, because this one is not talked about a lot, but it will be very costly for you if you ignore it and don't pay attention to it when you go to buy a house. And that is buying a home with polybutylene plumbing. What in the world is that? Well, good question. Polybutylene was a type of plumbing they made out of plastic resin between 1978 primarily to 1995 in the Phoenix area. So why did builders do this? Well, it was cheaper. That's why they avoided using copper back then, because copper was more expensive than using this type of product to put as plumbing in a house. But the problem is this material can deteriorate over time based upon certain chemicals that are mixed in with water flowing through the pipes over, again, longer periods of time. And there's been some issues with this because there's actually been a $1 billion lawsuit class action settlement that happened just recently here in the past because of homeowners that complained about not knowing this was an issue and then having to fork out a lot of money to have their whole house repiped. What does that cost? Well, on average, it's going to be anywhere from about $4,000 up to about $15,000 in the Phoenix area to have your house completely repiped. And that will obviously vary based upon the size of your house, square footage, and two-story, single-story, and all of those types of things. So it just depends on what size of house you have. But if you have polybutylene plumbing in a house you're looking to buy, the seller has to disclose that, and you need to do your due diligence through the inspection period to make sure your inspector points out what type of plumbing you have in the house. See, every single market across America based upon construction methods at any given time are different. And so I'm glad you're watching this video to know specifics for the Phoenix area, because hey, we're Everything Phoenix, and that's the city we love and are passionate about educating people about everything that has to do with this great city. Again, if you have any questions, call us at 480-660-5974. Reach out to a Calendly link below and we'll get you on the schedule and chat with you about anything you have questions on. And we would love to help you purchase a property and do it the right way here in the Phoenix area. And before we move here, if you want to know the 10 harsh realities that everyone should know about Phoenix, Arizona, then watch the video on the next page.